I've always wondered, what would a train station look like if it existed in a fantasy world? Would they float in the clouds, be powered by magic, or be overgrown by nature yet still feel alive? That's what I wanted to explore when I built the Skygate, the entrance to my floating capital, Voluptas. In this video, I'll show you how I create my own world in 3D while sharing stories about this place. So let's dive right in. When blocking out a scene, I'm not focused on creating detail. I mainly want to get a feel for the place I'm building. So I'm using very simple structures, mainly cubes and cylinders. I'm focusing on a rough idea of the architecture I have in mind. I also try to get a sense of the scale and just an overall good foundation that I can build on. Now let's talk a little bit about this place. The train station of Voluptas is a famous landmark, drawing visitors from far and wide. As the only official entry point to the floating capital, it serves as a grand gateway, where a massive bridge connects Voluptas to the mainland. This bridge carries a railway with tracks submerged in flowing water that cascades over the edges, creating breathtaking waterfalls. The station itself is a stunning fusion of nature and architecture. The skybound rails and elevated tracks offer a mesmerizing view of the world below. However, with this piece I focused on the Skygate, which is the entrance of the station. So let me show you around a little. It's one of those really cool things with Dreams, you can just walk around in the worlds you're creating. So here we are in the main hall of the station with its crystal leading up to the actual trains. The reason for blocking out much more than just the actual artwork I'm going to focus on is so I can really imagine this place in its fullest and how things would connect. Here, for example, this is the outside where you would be able to look at the sky and the world below. I also included shops and benches because, of course, people sometimes need food, wait for their train, or meet with other people. I try to think of these things while building this place, and in that way I believe I have a more clear vision for my artwork as well. So here I'm just showing you a quick look around in edit mode before we then jump into creating the actual structure, props and art. Basically going from a rough sketch to actually building the place. So from here I'm basically starting to recreate my rough structures with a lot more detail, and then step by step I will replace the block out with the actual assets. That way the world really starts to come to life. I think this is a really satisfying process to watch, so please enjoy that while I tell you a little more about my capital, Voluptas. It is a city spread across multiple floating islands that are connected with each other through massive routes and bridges. Voluptas is thriving, and that's not only because it's where the royal family lives and rules over the kingdom, it's also blessed by Saint Cainus, a dragon guardian who brought peace back to the world after the Great Dragon War. More about her later. But perhaps the true reason Voluptas flourishes is the crystal it holds, a powerful source of energy for the whole city. In my world there are two powerful sources of energy, crystals born from the world's tree, and dragon hearts that crystallize upon their death, and therefore people greedy as they are started hunting the dragons. These crystals can be used to power almost anything in this world, from household stuff to vehicles to tools and even weapons to some extent. I will explore all of this in more detail in future videos, so if you enjoy world building, lore-rich storytelling, or watching my art come to life, make sure to subscribe, that would make me really happy. Now, another huge part of Voluptas is that it's not only all above and beyond. Beneath the floating islands, along the giant routes and the Great Bridge, lies another part of the city, the Nest. It's home to the poor, the outcast, orphans who are building their shelters creatively in the sky itself. Along the island, clinging to the roots and hanging from the bridges, crafting entire neighborhoods in the air. There will be a contrast of people living on the thriving top side of Voluptas and the nestlings, that's what I called them. I'm also writing a tale about 3 orphan children living in the nest, a story of wonder, danger and hope told through their eyes as they chase adventure and search for meaning in the world below. More about that in the future as well, but now we come to the next phase of my creation process. This is where it won't just stay a 3D space, but become an actual artwork. At this point, the design process became a bit stagnant and I really wanted to finally dive into the art part, so I went with the flow and started to make things overgrown. And the way this works is that the crystal spreads energy around this place, which is full of life and enables growth in places you maybe wouldn't normally find it. I really love the look of these abandoned, overgrown places, but I wanted to do that without the place being abandoned, but thriving, so it actually becomes a visual feature, a nature phenomenon you could say. And also give more depth to the crystal. Instead of them just being an energy source, they hold life and nature within and spread that. I also used 1 or 2 assets from my other projects, like the pipes here, and then went on to overpaint a lot of my structure. This takes quite a bit of work, especially with detailed architecture like that, but that's the style that I've developed for myself, and I love it so much. I've said this before, it's inspired by works like Arcane and Spider-Verse. It gives a very handcrafted, natural look. I'm basically matte painting on top of my 3D scene. And this is what makes it look like a concept art, but done entirely in 3D, which gives a lot of advantages, like not being bound to one angle. You can just move the camera and have an infinite amount of paintings of this place. And that way imagine it in so much more detail. You can also very freely experiment with different moods and change things on the go. Now from here I'm starting to add a lot more detail, which truly starts to bring this place to life. So while I do that, let me talk to you a little more about how I even come up with places like that. And the best advice I can give you personally is to just look at the world building and places you love from your favorite films or games. And think about what you like about that so much, or how could concepts like that fit into your own world with your own twist to it. I would never rely on just one source of inspiration. For example, the whole of Voluptas is inspired by mainly 2 things. The main source is Final Fantasy XV. Tenebrae fascinated me so much, but it was merely a background in the actual game, so I really wanted to explore that concept further. There's a bit of Alticia in there. The other inspiration is again Arcane. Voluptas is very much thriving topside with steampunk elements like Piltover, and has also somewhat of an undercity, even though that is entirely different. So you see, Voluptas is heavily inspired by those, but still absolutely unique and its own. And you can see here I'm adding another layer of detail on top of my already fairly detailed stairs with those golden elements everywhere, inspired by the Art Nouveau style. Also, look at this, it's so satisfying when you have created assets that beautifully click together like that. From that point on, it's just really fun to experiment and think about how to use and expand on what you've already made. Also using the clouds from my previous scene, but I wasn't satisfied with just that. So to make this scene even more special, I wanted to add 2 very detailed pieces of art. The first one is a statue for Saint Kindness. So I took a female base model, adjusted it a little bit, and then started sculpting on top. Kindness is a holy character in my world. She's of the lineage of the Dragon Guardians and would later be known as the child of earth and sky. Because her spirit resonated with the living world, nature bent gently around her touch, and she was also the one who connected with the sky, the dragons, and brought peace back to the world after the Great Dragon War. People then started to form religions around her. She's a very memorable part of the history, so they built statues for her. So I thought by adding them to this place also adds history and culture. Then I tackled the last big thing for the scene, and that was to not make 1, but 2 actual artworks within the artwork. So I first made an epic golden border inspired as well by the Art Nouveau style, which a lot of the architecture is inspired from. And then I started to draw, which to be honest is not easy. It can be hard to be accurate, there's no selection or liquify, but I really wanted to include them. It was a chance to make this place feel even more special and also a way to tell more story through detail like that. So the first painting is Kindness and her dragon, trying to resemble the deep connection they had. I first did a sort of line art and then also actually painted beneath it. I kept it fairly simple, but I think it's cool that you can even do all of this in the same software. And then I painted a second artwork as well, which is the train going over the bridge leading to Voluptas, and I look at the finished version of the first one. It's kind of cool how they're like paintings on the wall now. Also a look at the statues, I decided to turn them into a kind of metallic gold material as well. And then I also expanded the background with a few more buildings, pipes and bridges, so this place feels more real and has layers to it. but we need to separate the background more. So for the final step, let's bring in some magic. So we have 4 tools to create mood and lighting: the sun and sky gadget, fog, individual lights, and color grading. And we'll be using them in this exact order, starting with the sun and sky. This determines the angle from which the light comes from, as well as the color and brightness of the sky. I wanted to have a little more saturation in the sky. Next up is the fog gadget. This was especially important for this scene, as this train station is in the sky. There would technically be a lot of mist or clouds, which creates a lot of mood. And it was also incredibly useful to create atmospheric perspective and separate the background, essentially reducing the noise and detail of the background for us. I also used some on the ground, which made it even moodier. Here's a quick look at the before and after the fog. You can see it makes a massive difference in atmosphere and clarity. After that came the individual spotlights. We are in 3D, we have all the power, we don't need to completely rely on the sunlight only. I use them to highlight specific areas, pronounce them more, like the whole entrance area, but also make it look like the sun is coming through at a few spots by using spotlight images. And also to enhance highlights or rim light around the clouds. And lastly, color grading. Here I'm changing the overall brightness, contrast and saturation, play around with shadows, midtones and highlights. I pushed the shadows into the blues because of the sky fill light, then added a little bit of bloom, which makes the light very soft and cinematic. A really useful trick as well is to look at your scene in grayscale mode, so you can check if your values are looking good. I think the grading helped the clarity. In grayscale, you can also see how much the fog helps with separating the background and reducing detail. I then also added some sound effects and particles floating through the air. This is always visually very pleasing and movement makes it feel more alive. I also love jumping into a camera, adding some depth of field. It makes it look so cinematic and a little bit like an animated movie from my own world, which is just so cool. And I also made a night mode switch. This happens through a keyframe, which I use to basically change the entire lighting setup, activate the lamps, adjust some colors, increase the fog density, and even lit up some windows of the buildings in the background. I also drew some animated fireflies around the lanterns. I love this version as well, it's very moody. It's just incredible that Dreams allows me to create different moods in real time in a matter of minutes. So now that we're done, let's have a look at the final transformation. This was one of the hardest scenes I've ever done and I'm quite proud of how it turned out. There's still so much to explore in this world. I hope you enjoyed the art and stories. I would love to be able to spend more time on creating this world and sharing it with you. So if you enjoyed those videos, don't forget to give it a like, comment and subscribe. It really helps. Also make sure to check out my last world building video where I created and talked about the Seeker's Path. And with that, thank you so much for your time. I hope you got inspired to create something yourself.